Hello, guys. Welcome to Maury's Movies. Today, we're going to be talking about a movie that's very near and dear to my heart. It is my own film called Ordinary Things. First of all, I'm going to start you off by explaining what Ordinary Things is. Ordinary Things follows a teenage boy who's very strange and abnormal, and it follows him as he does ordinary tasks, and you see the shenanigans and the trouble and all the stuff that he gets into. Today, we're specifically going to be analyzing conventions and representation in my movie Ordinary Things. Firstly, Ordinary Things is a movie that conforms with many conventions of comedy movies. But it also challenges some. Ordinary Things was made to conform with many comedy movies' conventions. Most of these conventions were visible through the main character, Jerry. Some examples of the conventions which Jerry represents are that most of the main characters in comedy movies are nerdy. And you can see that Jerry is nerdy by a shirt which shows a Spider-Man comic book, and you can see it by the way he acts, which usually conforms with that. So firstly, Ordinary Things is a comedy movie that conforms with many conventions of comedy movies, but it also challenges some. Ordinary Things was made to conform with many comedy conventions. Most of these conventions were visible through the main character, Jerry. Some examples of these conventions which Jerry represents are that most of main characters in comedy movies are nerdy. You can see Jerry's nerdiness by his shirt, which has a Spider-Man comic on it, which is a nerd symbol. Another convention that Ordinary Things follows is that many main characters in comedy movies tend to be outcasts and weird. And Jerry perfectly portrays that by how he acts in the grocery store. During the scene where Jerry sprays deodorant onto his face and the way he reacts to it shows how weird he is and proves the convention. Ordinary Things challenges the convention that in many movies the character undergoes some sort of redemption arc and betters themselves, and Jerry simply does not do that. A redemption arc means that the character usually starts off having many negative traits, such as being selfish or a jackass. But Jerry is a nice, harmless weirdo. He has no bad intentions, which is why he challenges the convention, because there is nothing to improve on. Ordinary Things conforms with the comedy subgenre known as slapstick comedy. Slapstick comedy is basically like comedy consisting of physical and visual types of comedy. For example, when Jerry gets hit in the back by a shopping cart or when he gets sprayed in the face with deodorant, it adds a sort of visual element to the comedy, which helps the audience engage more with it. And slapstick comedy is also more of a universal comedy because you don't need to understand the language to laugh from it. Ordinary Things also challenges the convention that comedy movies shouldn't be set in countries that aren't the United States. Most comedy movies nowadays are filmed in the United States. Because most of the film industry is based in the United States, but it is still a convention. And since I filmed Ordinary Things in a place like Thailand, Phuket, where it's a tropical island, even though it's still developing, it's still so different to the American standard that it challenges the convention. Now I want to switch topics and I want to talk about representation of social groups. I want to explain to you guys what social groups and I represented, and how I failed to represent some social groups and why I chose to represent other social groups. So yeah, if you are ready, we'll start now. So first of all, representing social groups was something that I really considered when I made my film Ordinary Things. Ordinary Thing has no political views, and its only point is to make people laugh and smile, which is why I made Ordinary Things. The only people I tried to represent in Ordinary Things are Israeli people by casting them, which I will talk about now. My film represents Israeli actors. Both the main character, which is played by me, and the voice of the mother are played by Israeli actors. As an Israeli director, I feel like it's important to represent Israeli actors since they are really underrepresented in movies recently. I think it's very important to represent my people. Israeli actors have not had the best representation recently, and Israel is in a bad state currently, which is why I feel I need to point a positive light on my people. And I think the actors that I've chosen as and I think the Israeli actors that I've chosen are really, really talented and deserve their roles, and I really want to emphasize how representing Israeli actors is really important to me. One of the groups that I failed to represent in my movie are women. The only woman who has an influential role in the movie is Jerry's mother, and she is not really represented well. As a director, I know how important it is to represent women, since my comedy film has no serious undertone, and I don't think a woman would be positively represented in my film, since it's very silly and it's not important. I chose to not represent one. Going into more detail, my film also has a negative representation for middle-aged women, since it represents them as grumpy and sort of unpleasant to be around, which is far from the truth. I got my mother to play the mother in Ordinary Things, and I want to say how much I love her and how much she means to me, but this film did not represent her well, and it did not represent middle-aged women well. But since I think my film is not very important and does not have a very serious undertone and no serious message and stuff, it's not very influential that I represented her negatively, although I do regret it. My film also fails to represent teenagers well. It does have Jerry, who is a teenage boy in the movie, but Jerry is very nerdy and very weird and strange, which is not a good representation of teenage boys because there's so much more to them and to their demographic. But I feel like media has this sort of representation and stereotype for teenage boys in movies, which are nerds, which is like they're nerdy, they like superheroes, they're not very social, and I feel like my character falls into that stereotype, and it does fail to represent teenage boys well, and I do regret that. So this was my review of my own film, Ordinary Things, which I went into conventions and representation, and I hope you all enjoyed this. Thank you so much. Goodbye. If you did enjoy this audio podcast, please make sure to follow, and see you in the next one.